So before we move on to our hiking app, there's one more skill that I want to teach you, and that's reverse geocoding. So the basic idea is that you give some sort of location. Google Maps will give you back information about that location. For example, its address. That's what we're going to make, is an app that can sort of take an address and then get us back from there. So we want to move forward with our map and location demo that we had from last time. We just kind of want to extend this just a little bit so we can do something cool every time that we get a new address. So we are going to move up to where we have the code for our on location change. Of course, we still want to, clear the map and then add all the new stuff. That's great. That's fine. But there is one extra thing that we'd like to do, and that's to work with something called a geocoder. So again, Google Maps makes this incredibly simple that we pass it any latitude and longitude, and then it's going to turn it into an address for us, which is just great stuff. So what we're going to do first is we're just going to type out geocoder, and we'll call this geocoder. And with this geocoder, we got to say new geocoder, and we are going to set this up with our application context. And from there, we're going to go ahead and pass our locale dot default. So you might be wondering what this locale stuff is. Well, you'll notice if you do locale dot, there's all sorts of different locales, right? And these are for different locations around the world. But if you do dot get default, what this does is it basically says, hey, whatever the user's current phone is in, if they're in Canada, if they're in the UK, US, Japan, wherever it is, it uses that locale in order to get back the address information. So once we've gone ahead and got that in place, then we can go about trying to get some information from a particular location. So to do this, we just access the geocoder, and we're going to say geocoder.get from, and we want get from location. So this means we have to provide it a latitude and a longitude, and you can see this is where we can get back that information. So we're going to use our location object. We're going to say location.latitude, then we're going to say location.longitude. And the last thing that it asks for is the max results that we want back, because if you give it a particular location, maybe there's a couple of different addresses around, and you're wondering, okay, well, which one of these is supposed to be correct? Well, you just want to give something there. So let's just go ahead and do one to say, just give us your best match of whatever it is that you found. Now, this is going to require a try catch. So let's go ahead and just hover over here so we can get the auto try catch. I'm going to change this, instead of IO exception, I like to do it just for all exceptions. But once we have that, we will go ahead and do a little bit of work with this. And the first thing that we basically want to do is make sure that we got back some information. And so this geocoder, it passes back a list of things. And so we have to go ahead and put this into a variable. So we're going to say list. Oh, not list view. We want a list, and this is going to be a list of addresses, just like that. And we're going to give it the name of list addresses. Okay, so that's going to be equal to this geocoder thing. Then we got to check and see if we actually got the info that we were looking for. So let's set up an if statement, and inside of there, we're going to first check and see if list addresses is not equal to null. If it's equal to null, that means we got back nothing. And the next thing that we want to check for is make sure that there's actually something there. So we're going to say list addresses dot size, and we're going to make sure that that is greater than 0. Okay. So if this all works, then this means that we actually have an address that we can work with. So we're going to go ahead and do a log. We'll say log.i, and we're going to pass into here place info. And the second parameter that we'll throw in there is our list addresses, and we're going to get the first item in there because we only asked for one, right? In here when we said list address max results 1. Then with that, we want to go ahead and convert that to a string so that we can see it. Okay, so now that we've got this in place, let's go ahead and run our app. Okay, so we should be able to, if we move to a particular location and we send that information, we should get that back. So let's go ahead and find a place that we can actually look for. It'd be cool to maybe do something in New York. So let's just search for New York. Well, let's do Empire State Building. Empire State Building. So should have a link for a map here. Here we go. And we'll go ahead and inside of this URL, we can find that latitude and the longitude. So I'm going to copy that latitude. Let's open up our simulator here, emulator. Plug that in there. And then we need the longitude. And we'll copy that. Okay, once we pass those in there, we'll go ahead and send this. And look at that. Oh, it took us to Antarctica. That's not what I was expecting. Let me go back and see. Did we miss something here? Does this, I mean, does this supposed to be negative? Nope, I don't think that's our problem. Let's see what happens if this is a positive 73. Man, that still puts us way above. Let's see what happens if I do negative there. Now that puts us in Greenland. Wow, okay, well I'm a little bit shocked that our latitude and our longitude are so off. Let's, in a separate tab, maybe we can't trust that latitude and longitude for New York. Let's just see if we're even within the right ballpark here. So 40 and 74, they're saying that both of those should be positive. So 40, yeah, and 74. Maybe I mixed the two around, so maybe this needs to go here, and then this needs to be 40. No. Let me go ahead and take a look at this real quick. All right, so I finally figured out what the issue was. My latitude and my longitude were off, so I finally got those things hammered in, and look at that. We're in New York and hopefully at the Empire State Building here. So once we've done that, let's go ahead and go to Logcat. And we can see all the different places we were going as we tried to find the correct location. So that's pretty cool to see all those different addresses there. And look, I mean, at this last one, we got to New York. So this geocoding isn't perfect because, right, like, let's go ahead and look. This is West 33rd Street in New York, okay? And if we go ahead and go back and look at this Empire State Building, this says, you know, 5th Avenue. So, I mean, it is on, look at that, 31, 32, 33. So, I mean, I think it's, you know, pretty close there. But, I mean, it's not the exact address, but I think you could use it fairly reliably to at least get in the ballpark. I mean, an interesting thing to do would be to take the address that we get from our app here and then plug that back in, which leads us to the next thing is, how do we take this object, this address object, and turn it into something that we can actually read and that the user can understand, right? Like this West 33rd Street and all that good stuff there, okay? So let's go ahead and talk about how we can do that. So what we're going to do is let's give ourselves some space to work here. After we've successfully made sure that we've got an address here that we can work with, let's go ahead and make a string that we're going to call address. And this initially is just going to be equal to an empty string. And we're going to fill this address up over time with information about the particular location. So when we do this, we kind of have to work through a couple of layers of stuff. And let's go ahead and take a look again at Logcat, like what are some of the things that we'd want to get out of here. So if we go ahead and look, some of these could be like the locality, New York, that seems to be this like state, for example. Or maybe admin is going to be that. Also, right, because we're in New York State, New York City. Let's see, admin, Pennsylvania. So when we were over here, locality, Fredericktown. Okay, so the locality is the city, the admin's the state, right? And you can see, we can just kind of go through here. The thoroughfare, that seems to be like the actual address. So we kind of want to work through those pieces. And again, this is going to change depending on what your locality is. So again, you know, if you're in the UK or China, Japan, like I'm sure these are going to have different names as you're moving through here, unless this is some sort of standard things for addresses. I think you'd have to play around with it for whatever your address type is. But regardless, you find something that you want. For example, the admin. So we've figured out the admin is equal to the state. So what we're going to do is create an if statement. Let's get that all set up. And we first want to check and make sure that there's an actual thing there, because you can see sometimes like these sub-admins are equal to null. We're not going to be using sub-admin in this situation. But, you know, for example, if admin was equal to null for some reason, we would want to be able to appropriately handle that. So what we're going to do is first talk to our list addresses .get 0. Okay, that's getting that first address object. And then with that, we're going to do .get, and there's all sorts of different items here, right? So there's, you know, URLs and stuff like that. We wanted to get the admin, so we're going to get admin area. And so once we get this admin area, and just to check to show you what that is, that gives us back a string. We want to check and see what this is equal to. And we're not trying to see if it's an empty string or something like that. We want to make sure that this thing is not equal to null. Null basically means that it doesn't exist, something went wrong like that. And so we're just checking for nullability here. So if this thing is not null, then we're going to say, okay, you know what? We're going to take our address and we're going to plus equal this line of code here where we go and get the admin, right? So this is throwing essentially the state onto there, okay? So once we go ahead and get that in place, it's not only do we want to throw the state, we also want to throw on a space here so that we can add the next thing that's coming on the list. And it's going to be pretty similar. So I think the next thing we'd look for is the city, which in this case looks like New York. So we'll just go ahead and copy this and paste below. And instead of get admin area, we're going to look for get locality. There we go. And we want to change this get locality for here as well, so that, you know, we're adding the appropriate thing to the address there. So once we've got that in place, the next thing that we're going to be looking for is the thoroughfare. And so we'll go ahead and just copy and paste what we had before. But this time we want that thoroughfare because that seems to be get thoroughfare because that seems to be where we can get that information. And let's see, is that, I think that's about all that we're looking for. Latitude, longitude. Ooh, even some of these try and get the phone number. That's kind of interesting there. But yeah, this looks pretty good. So let's make sure we get thoroughfare here, that we are copying that and pasting that down below. We don't have to do the extra space there at the end because that's going to be the very last one. But once we've gone ahead and gotten all those different pieces, and I mean, you could get more detailed if you want. You could go and get the country name and stuff like that, right? Like that, let's see, it's listing USA. I'm wondering what the name is to that. There we go, country name, United States, country code, US. You can go grab that. You can even get the postcode. Maybe let's add the postcode. So let's see, right now it would be like New York, New York. I was just thinking about how we do addresses, and typically we do the street address first, and then, and let's go ahead and add something onto here, then we usually do the city, and then, oops, let me cut and paste this. All right, so we've got the street, we've got the city, we've got the state. Maybe between city and state, we're going to put the zip code in there. That's, I think, something that would be good. Or they'll call it here the postal code. So let's copy one of these, change this to be get postal code. All right, so we'll copy and paste, update that. And then for our last one here where we get the state, we'll get rid of the extra space. All right, so all that work to go get this address, and we'll go ahead here, we'll make a toast, and we're going to say toast.makeText. We'll go ahead and pass in the maps activity.this. We'll also pass in this address string that we've been building up, and then we'll say how long we want to show it. I'll do short here, and then we'll make sure we'll do a dot show at the end because I seem to always forget that. Okay, so that looks like all the code that we need to get this in order to work. So let's go ahead and give this a run. Again, depending on where you live or how you want this address displayed, you might want to change what this looks like here through the different parts that we get. But the big thing here is that we should be checking for nullability to make sure, you know, just in case we get null on something, we can recover from that. So app opens up here, should be on the Empire State Building. We'll go ahead and hit send here. And look at that, West 33rd Street, New York, 1001, New York. So I'm also going to here, just because for fun, I want to log and plug back in the address and see how close it is to the Empire State Building. You know, see how accurate Google is of an address Google is providing here. So we'll say something like address, and then we'll provide the actual address there. And let's run this. Yeah, this is kind of fun. You know, we searched Google for the location of the Empire State Building, got the latitude and the longitude, plugged it back into Google Maps to get the address. We'll see if it all matches out. I know it sounds kind of ridiculous what we're doing, but we'll go ahead and send this the West 33rd Street, and look, that printed out down there for us. So if we just copy this exactly and go back to our search bar and look for that, oh, it's pretty close. So the Empire State Building was right over here. At least I think it was, right? Oh, now I'm starting to doubt where, what'd they say? It was on 5th Avenue? Oh, okay. So it wasn't the closest in the world. Oops, and we lost that for a second. Right, so it's given us this address, and Empire State Building is over there. But at least we're in the general vicinity there with what we're trying to do. Okay, so with this information, we can now go ahead and work on our hiking app.